Are you an investigative professional? Did you know you can find the best private investigator resources using investigatorstoolbox.com? This resource community was built exclusively for licensed investigators and investigative professionals. You can network directly with members, educate yourself through free webinars and blogs, and even create your own customizable research library. Membership starts for as little as 49 cents a day. Download the Investigator's Toolbox app or visit our webpage at www.investigators-toolbox.com.
Is a good case management system keeping you from taking your business to the next level? Crosstracks is the premier case management system for the investigative community. They're the only SOC 2 certified case management software available. Visit crosstracks.com, tell them you're a listener, and save even more. Get a plan in place for the new year to grow your business to the next level. Today's a special episode. Retired FBI Agent Jerri Williams joins the show. Jerri hosts FBI Retired Case File Review, a podcast dedicated to reviewing old FBI cases and the agents who worked on them. This show's amazing and it gives a real peek into what it's like to be an FBI agent. Let's jump right in. So please welcome Jerri Williams and your host, private investigator Matt Spaier.
Welcome, everybody, to this week's episode of PI Perspectives. Well, podcast worlds collide once again. I want to welcome my friend Jerri Williams to the program. Jerri, how are you?
I am fantastic. It's a great day today. Beautiful day.
Yeah. So you have the FBI Retired Case File Review. That's your podcast. You've had an amazing 245 or 246. We haven't decided yet. But we'll say a lot of episodes.
A lot.
Yeah. And it's great. I love your show. I stumbled upon it through, I think, like Apple iTunes or whatever. It was one of the suggestions for me based upon.
Oh, that's good to know.
So your analytics are working, whatever you're doing. So
great, yay!
And that was a year and a half ago, I think. So I'm a big fan of your show. For folks that don't know who you are, tell me a little bit about your background and tell me a little bit about the show.
Yeah, well, if you haven't picked up on it yet from my branding behind me, I am a retired FBI agent. You know, I worked for the FBI for 26 years. I specialized in fraud cases and corruption, doing things like advanced fee schemes, Ponzi schemes, telemarketing fraud, and embezzlement. I love those type of cases. I'm still fascinated by fraud and corruption. I'm now in my retirement, you know, like you said, I'm doing the podcast, been doing that. It will be 6 years in January, and writing crime novels and nonfiction books about the FBI. So, I'm keeping myself busy in retirement.
Yeah. And I love how you say on your show, like, you just wanted to bring to light, you know, to people understand like the ins and outs of the FBI and how it works, because we have this impression by what we see through movies and books and things like that. And that's not necessarily the way things happen, although you get documentaries now that are a little more popular, but really it's different. You know, Elliot Ness isn't the Elliot Ness you think he is, right? So it's super interesting. Very cool stuff.
Yeah. And I do love crime fiction. You know, that's what I read. You know, that's what I watch on TV. So it's not that, you know, I want to be critical of, you know, these great shows and movies that are out there. All I want to do is just let people who are also as interested in as I am in, you know, crime fiction, just to know when things are just a little bit inaccurate, you know, how it really works. So just giving a little bit of knowledge behind, you know, the entertainment value of these different shows and books and movies.
Definitely. I know I'm a big Law and Order fan. I have been, you know, for forever. And I can recall vividly watching it with my wife and just yelling at the screen like, no, that's wrong. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I say, you know, it's very difficult to get things right when the investigation has to be investigated and resolved all in, an hour, or for a movie, 2 hours. And so I understand. I absolutely understand why these creative compromises are made. But again, I just don't want anybody joining the FBI and walking into Quantico thinking they know everything about the FBI because they watch the FBI shows on CBS. I just want to say, whoa, 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 whoa. That's not necessarily,
You mean if folks
how it
don't
really
hook up with
happens.
one another in Quantico? That show was a guilty
No.
pleasure for me. I got to be honest.
Yeah.
I knew it was all BS, but I loved watching it.
Yeah, it is good. It's a great show, and the
Yeah.
characters, really bring the emotions to the show, and show how, the FBI agents care about not just the victims and the subjects, but everybody that's involved in the investigation. I really enjoy that. But, again, if I see something that I think I need to bring some reality to, then I do that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Blacklist is another one. I'm obsessed with that show.
No, I've
Yeah.
never watched that show, and I'd love to. I do, one of my things that I do is to review, TV shows and movies for accuracy, and I would love to do that, but I'm so behind.
Yeah.
I'd have to do it by a season and just kind of binge the season, but
Don't do it, because if you
yeah.
start watching it, like James Spader is such a great actor.
Yeah, he is. He is.
You'll start, forgetting to pick up, people you're supposed to pick up from school,
Like, oh no,
That
I
kind
have
of
an
stuff.
interview. I missed it.
Exactly. Right. It happens. So you worked out of the Philadelphia office, I think, right?
Yes, I was in for 24 years, and I was in for 26 years, and 24 of those years were right in Philadelphia. I love that city. I love that office. I love those people,
Yeah.
but I don't live there anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. You're a Southern girl now. So one of the more recent episodes that you had that I really, really enjoyed is when you kind of interviewed yourself. And, you had talked about a situation where you had a wiretap that you had to go and recover. So tell me a little bit about that situation, because I thought it was hilarious.
Yeah, and the episode, I really enjoyed the episode because I had this case, and a lot of times, you don't remember every little detail about an investigation. So, and I understand that when my podcast guests tell me that, and I try to help them with newspaper articles and things like that to help jog their memory. Well, I was able to get the victims in the case to come on the show with me, and they remembered things that I didn't remember. But one of the things that happened was I had wired them up, and the loan shark that was, shaking them down, took them into the bathroom and did a strip search and found it was a pager. I can say that now because we don't use pagers anymore.
Exactly.
But the transmitter and the wire, was part of a pager they were wearing. And they waved this little wand over it and saw that it was active, and they took it. And, that wasn't good, but, they let them go and said they were going to, figure out whether or not this was, a wire, and they took it and left. And when I went back to the office, I said something to our assistant special agent in charge that, they took the device, and he's like, well, you got to go get it.
Oops.
Yeah, that cost a lot of money. You got to go get it. And it's like, well, I'm not finished with the investigation. We were close.
Yeah.
And so, we wrapped things up, and either that day or the next day, I went to the strike force attorney's office, and we put together, the affidavit for search and arrest warrants. And I walked into the check cashing agency, and I said, you have something that belongs to me. And he, what are you talking about? I told him, you took the pager. And I went into his office and found it.
Wow.
Sitting in a glass of water. So,
That's fantastic.
so yeah, I brought it back to the office, but I don't think it was any good anymore. So
Got a little retirement. So it's awesome. Yeah, it's so cool. And I think one of the other things I appreciate too is you have these documentaries that come out that highlight, certain cases and things. And
Right.
then, you'll follow up and you'll interview like the real agents that were involved in that. I think that's so cool. Like the McMillions episode was fantastic. Like really cool.
I think what happens, when they have, a show, a true crime, a documentary on TV, they get sound bites. And so the agent may have so much more to say and some really cool behind the scenes stories to tell,
Right.
but it doesn't end up on the show because they're talking to a lot of different people and they've got, different angles that they're going through, and there's so much more to tell. And, I like to say that I give my guests, my retired and former FBI agent guests, a place where it's not going to be chopped up with commentary. It's just them. Every now and then I pipe up and ask a question or make a comment, but really it's a case review where I give them the platform to, tell the story, tell what happened from the very beginning of the case, the predication, how they got into it, till the very end, where hopefully, some bad guy is being sent off to jail. So
that's what I loved about Charlie Price's interview. When you started with him, he's like, I'm going to teach you how to do this. I'm going to tell you how to do this. Like he laid the outline before he even started the show.
Yeah. That was a good one.
Really good.
That was the last one that I did on an artful interview.
Yeah.
And he really did a good job. And what was really good, a lot of times people talk about interviewing, which of course is very, very important for people in, doing investigations. But he also talked about getting confessions, not just talking to somebody, getting them to talk back to you.
Yep.
And he also talked about signed statements, how to do it. And he had some unique ideas that were very, very good, that really worked on empathy and your relationship with the subject that you're interviewing. And, I learned a lot too.
I would say if you're listening to this program right now and you're an investigator and you interview people, that is an episode that you must listen to, because there is a lot of insight there, a lot of talk of social engineering and how that all works, and creating, and we're hit with so many different techniques of how to do this. And he had covered some. I think he talked about the Reed technique, which is very popular. But there are other stuff out there. There are other ways of doing things that are out there, and it was very refreshing, very cool to hear a different take on those things. Definitely, for sure.
And I'm pretty sure that was episode 245.
All right, we settled that argument.
I'm pretty sure that was 245. Charlie Price.
Yeah, I think you're right there too. That was a great one. I mean, there's just such a mountain of guests that you've had. You've had some of my former guests have been on there too. I think Jimmy Gagliano. You think you did 2 episodes with Jimmy?
Yeah, he's been on twice.
Yeah, he's a great guy. I love Jim. I had met him at a certified fraud examiners conference. I was a speaker and Jimmy was a speaker. I'd never met him before, and he spoke right before me, and my stomach fell to the ground. I wanted to run out the door.
Yeah, I got to follow him.
Exactly. I'm like, how the heck do I follow this guy? Like, he's so charismatic and just booyah, like right in your face. Like, I mean, he literally standing room ovation as he's walking out because he had some flight to catch, and he's like, peace, I'll see you. And here I come to lay an egg right after him. So
I'm sure you did well, but yeah, he's good. He's good.
Yeah.
He did some of the media for the New York office, so he's been trained. Yeah. He's been trained by the best. Yeah.
Oh, totally. I mean, and that, and we can talk about podcasting behind the scenes, and I kind of want to get into that too a little bit, because we both do it. We both have a good amount of shows and just have some experience on doing that. Getting somebody to do an interview, and then finding that either they don't have good equipment or they're not the best speakers and things like that. I'm sure it probably doesn't happen so much on your end, because you go through Quantico, they probably teach you how to do all that stuff. But I've come across experiences too where it doesn't end the way you think it's going to end. Tell me a little bit about what some of the experiences you've had with that.
Well, I do have guests. Most of my guests come on and they are pretty skilled. If they have a case that they think, they want to talk about on the show, they've probably spoken about that case before,
Sure.
to an audience.
Yep.
But every now and then, someone is not necessarily as prepared as I would like them to be. I mean, my shows are long. I know that. And, sometimes they don't have it laid out in a chronological way where we can follow along. And so, I produce this show on the spot. I have a lot of editing to do sometimes because I'll stop and say, why don't we talk about that later? Or before we talk about that, didn't this happen? And so we're in there talking all the time. And then I just go back in and edit all of my commentary and directions and things out. I really like a clean show, so I spend a lot of time. You don't hear my guests stuttering or, repeating words or coughing or sneezing, which they do when we're recording, but you don't hear it because I really want you to get into the case. I really want to take you away. And it's like you're on a journey, with the agent. And sometimes I think, listening to, ums and, a little bit of stuttering and things like that can take you out of the story, because again, I write crime novels too. So I know about keeping, a reader or a listener in the stories. And so I do a lot of editing and I think it works out well. Sometimes, we've talked about this, that the audio for my guest is not optimal. They don't have a fancy microphone or they don't have their office space set up so that there's not a lot of echoes and things like that. Sure. And I deal with it. Sometimes the audio is not as good, but I make sure that the content is so good that you don't care.
Yeah.
At least I try.
You try, right? I mean, that's always a difficult thing. Yeah, I've had it all happen. I've had people get food deliveries when we're talking. I've had dogs, run onto the screen, and phone calls obviously come in. The terrible bings and the bongs of emails coming in on stuff. I mean, this is the world we live in now. Everyone's remote, and I do a video aspect of the show too, so that's always a challenge. Audio and video lighting now becomes an issue. I've had people on that they look like they live in Count Dracula's castle. Like there's no light there. I had one of my friends, and she's a dear friend of mine, and the lighting wasn't great. And like as a joke afterwards, I went onto Amazon and I bought her a ring light and sent it to her. I was like, here, I know you're going to be doing lots of interviews, so here, use this next time, please.
Yeah, before I started doing more video interviews, not for my show, because I am way too lazy for that. Yeah. To get ready for you, I had to, do the hair and put the makeup on and all of that. And usually when my guests see me when I'm recording, since it's all audio, I got a baseball cap on and no makeup. And they're like, ooh, who's that?
She's undercover.
Yeah, but I'm trying to make it as easy for me and comfortable for them as possible. Yeah. But I don't mind doing the video shows for other people, but
we're all used to it. It's just kind of the world we live in right now.
Camera ready.
Yes, exactly. Got to live camera ready. And there's grace to be had by everybody, because we just understand that life happens. We're actually going to jump out for a break real quick. And when we come back, I really want to just keep continuing digging in on this stuff. I'm really honored to have you here, chatting. Again, I'm a little bit of a fanboy, but you have good content out there. So everybody sit tight. We're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back.
I want to talk to everybody today about ScopeNow.com. ScopeNow has been a big time sponsor of this program for quite some time, and I just love their service. I've been using them since the beginning. I'm one of their beta customers, and it's been so awesome to see them grow into the business that they are today, and just how they just keep reinventing themselves and pushing themselves to get more and more information. what it comes down to is Scope Now is a tool that you definitely need to use if you do social media investigations, any internet research, and really spending less time digging around and looking for information. I think is one of the best points of how Scope Now can help you. Their AI platform, their analytics are amazing. You really get an idea of what you need. You're reducing the time, you're reducing the manpower that you're spending on doing this research because they're essentially doing it for you, and they're doing it correctly, which is most important. One of the new things that they're actually offering is this flagging system where you can flag behaviors and really highlight and look out for fraud. If you're doing a lot of fraud research, this is a fantastic tool, and you can set up alerts. So you have particular people that you're looking at, you can actually set up alerts to get notifications when the criteria that you set up is actually is flagged and goes off. It's really, really amazing. And their relationship and association analytics are top notch, really cutting edge and really, really cool. When they brought that out on version 3, it was a game changer. I mean, really being able to see how people interact together and having that relationship, analysis is really, really something that's cool. One of the other things about being involved with Scope Now is their ability to offer webinars. Their team is cutting edge on putting together and getting out really, really great content. If you're a member of Scope Now, if you know who they are, you've seen them around on LinkedIn, you'll know that they're constantly doing webinars on these new websites that are coming out, and they're really staying on top of it. And don't forget, any reports that you generate, you can actually white label those reports and put your own logos on and really make them look professional, which could equate to more billing for you as well. So check them out today. It's www.scopenow.com. They're a great, great company. They should be one of the tools in your toolbox, along with whatever kind of search engines you do. You need to make sure that Scope Now is a part of that suite. Scopenow.com.
Check out the PI Institute of Education at piinstitute.com. Since 1989, Kelly Riddle has been teaching on subjects such as surveillance, nursing home investigations, insurance fraud, domestic investigations, hidden assets, and accident scene investigations. The PI Institute of Education is a featured learning partner in the investigatorstoolbox.com. So check out the free content on the site, then visit the Institute for more great savings on additional classes. Get the latest issue of PI Magazine. Robert Freed and Dr. Henry Lee graced the cover. Available online or hard copy.
And welcome back to PI Perspectives. This is your host, Matt Spaier. Today we have the great Jerri Williams with us today. Jerri, welcome back to the program.
Yes, thank you. I'm having fun.
Yeah, this is great. I'm definitely a little behind the scenes, a little bit of, just a couple of podcasters talking shop here. But before we get back into that, I really want to highlight and cover a very prestigious award that you had won recently and an honor that you had. So tell me a little bit about what happened a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, so November 18th, I was invited to Washington, D.C. at the beautiful and elegant Four Seasons Hotel, and I was given the FBI Agents Association's G-Man Honors Distinguished Service Award. So I was I can't even tell you. It was just unbelievable. It was an emotional event. So the FBI Agents Association is like the union for active agents, for the 14,000 active agents who are now in the FBI. And every year they have a fundraising event in order to get money for their scholarship fund. And then they also have a fund for agents who may need additional help for tragedies, whether they have illnesses or there's a death in their family. They just need extra financial and emotional support. So they have these programs, and there's a fundraising event every November, and they always have a keynote speaker. And last year it was Dr. Fauci. Mm-hmm. Years before that, it's been CIA directors and generals, and this year, for the very first time, it was a FBI agent, a retired FBI agent, me. And I was like, what?
That's so
It
cool.
was just so much fun. It was elegant. It was beautiful. It was 400 people there. And the highlight was that myself and my friends, I brought as my guests, two other retired agents, well, three other retired agents, but two of them, along with me, got to sit at the table and have dinner and chit chat with the current FBI director, Christopher Wray, and his lovely wife, Helen. And it was just so much fun.
So, like, having those crazy experiences of sitting down and eating with somebody is so awesome. I had that happen to me, the National Association of Legal Investigators down in Tampa a couple of years ago. I was too busy chit chatting with a bunch of people, and I was late to get into the room. Everybody's kind of sitting, and the only available spot that was open, I went and sat down. So I'm sitting down and I'm starting to eat, and all of a sudden, F. Lee Bailey comes in and he sits down right next to me, and he's the keynote speaker, right? And I'm literally having lunch with F. Lee Bailey, chatting, and he's like, "Oh, I gotta go up and talk to everybody. I'll be back." Like, it was the coolest thing.
Yeah,
Uh,
that was so cool. And I did give the keynote speech, and that was phenomenal too. With just working on that speech and trying to figure out what I wanted to say. But I have to say, one of the coolest things was to have the FBI director who spoke before me, kind of plug my books.
that was cool. Just somebody.
Yeah, he talked about the book, my books. He talked about the podcast, and I'm like, oh my God, I wonder if I could take out that audio because
Yeah.
I had the audio for the entire program, which I'll be posting next week, as an FBI episode because the program was really, really good. But I wonder if I could take that out and and use it as, an ad on social media.
I think you have to. I mean, you literally have to. That is so cool, and really, one of the reasons they gave you that honor is just all the stuff that you do, just to bring a good light to the agency and to create that network. It's an honor for an agent to come onto your show, obviously. And that's a really cool thing. So I look at folks like you. I look at folks like Jane Mason, that has her secure FBI directory. That these are people that are post career, but they're still in network and still looking to help one another, which I think is fantastic.
Yeah. I really, really like that aspect of it too. And, I do my very best. I have agents on who have books and who have podcasts and who have different companies that they're operating, and I give them that platform to talk about what they're doing, and hopefully if my listeners like what they're doing, that they'll give them some business. So
Yeah.
it's really a family situation, of us still taking care of each other in retirement.
Yeah, and one of the things that I've noticed, I get a lot of emails and contacts from agents that are about to retire or retiring, and they're like, I love listening to your show because I'm learning how to do this type of work. That it's one thing to
Yeah,
work for
it's a
the government,
business.
and it's another thing to be a business owner and not have that support that you used to have. Yes, you have the connections, but you can't really do the things that you used to be able to do. This whole I'll just get a subpoena and we'll get the information. Like,
Yeah,
it's not there. It doesn't exist
not
anymore,
there.
right? And then them trying to wrap their heads around that and understand how to do it. So I do get a lot of feedback from that. Just like, thank you, for doing this because I'm learning stuff. And I was like, absolutely, this is cool. We all got to help one another.
Yeah.
And
But it's a lot of work. I know for many podcasters, and I applaud them. It is a business, and they're earning money from their podcast. And I know people keep telling me all the time, because I'm at a level now that I can make a little bit of a coin, by having ads. But for some reason, the idea of an agent, spilling their guts out about a story or something that happened or how it affected their marriage or, and in the middle of it having an ad, it just doesn't feel good to me. Now, I do make money off of the podcast from, plugging my own books and selling a few books. And I've gotten some unbelievable opportunities, indirect opportunities from, being on the podcast. But it is a business, and, you have to invest in the business to get it up and running and to continue operating it.
Yeah, I mean, my first year, equipment and production and all the other stuff, just getting going on that was, it was a write-off. So it was all good stuff. So tell me a little bit about your books. You said you had 2 books. What are they, and what are they about?
Yeah, well, I actually have 4. So I have 2. Yeah, I have 2 crime novels, and it follows my, black female FBI agent who's married with 3 kids, and what she does as she tries to juggle her home life and her investigative life. It's dark. There's lots of profanity.
Sure.
There's some, juicy bits.
Okay.
But it's because it's inspired by a true case of 2 friends of mine in the Philadelphia division who investigated corruption in the Philadelphia strip club industry.
Yep.
And so it's gritty, it's raw, it's not what people expect, and I love it. And that's called Pay to Play. Then I have the second in the series, Greedy Givers, which was inspired by my big $350 million Ponzi scheme case that I worked on with a couple of other agents. And I'm working on the third one. Now, the nonfiction books, my best-selling nonfiction book is FBI Myths and Misconceptions, a manual for armchair detectives. And that's where I actually go through 20 cliches about the FBI that you see all the time in books, TV, and movies. And then the fourth one is kind of a companion book. It's a fun word search book where it has all FBI themes, and I did that with my son as a way to kind of do a college fund for his daughter, my little granddaughter Wendy. Right. And I'm putting out the books when I can, and I'm enjoying that too, which of course that was my initial motivation for all of this, and sure. it's kind of taken off and gotten out of control.
Yeah, like we joked before about being retired, like quote unquote retired. The good news is that you don't have to go fetch a pager.
Yeah, that's
like
true. That's true. I don't have to go fetch a pager. But I would love. I just got 3 new books. I've got the newest Michael Connolly, the newest John Grisham, and then a friend of mine, Wanda Morris, just has her debut novel out. I have those waiting for me, and they've been there now for the last month or 2, and I just can't find the time outside of all of this other stuff that I'm doing to just sit down and read a book, and I got to do something about that.
Yeah, I think the last book I attempted to read was something by John Maxwell. It was a business book, and I got a few pages in and then got distracted, and I understand that I'm like an audiobook guy, and while I'm driving, I can listen to something, but unfortunately, like taking that time, and I have 4 children too, so it's like I'm involved with them. They're young, they have programs and stuff they're doing. I do music with my church.
I listened to your Christmas song. Beautiful.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. I think I would go crazy if I didn't have that little side project, a little something just to get the creativity out. And which kind of leads us here. Like you and I, we both have that entrepreneurial type of spirit. When we channel like what we do into different arenas and different areas, it to me it's fun. I love doing the podcast. I love doing extra stuff. As much as I love doing the investigative work too. It's just
when do you have time for that?
Get that all the time. Like when do you sleep? I'm high functioning. I need 5.5, 6 hours of sleep and I'm good. That's kind of how I live my life, and I'm always pushing on to the next thing and doing the next thing there.
Yeah, that's a good term, high functioning.
Yeah.
I think most investigators, police officers, and definitely FBI agents are high functioning, and they take that with them, in retirement. And because I really am supposed to be retired.
Right.
A lot of agents retire from their FBI job, and most have a really good post FBI job, and I did too. For 7 years I was the media director for SEPTA, which is the Philadelphia transportation system, the trolleys, the buses, the subways, and the trains. And I did that for 7 years. Loved it, but it was really hard work, 24/7 work. And so when I decided I was just going to retire and just write books and read books, my high functioning personality just wouldn't let me do that. And now I'm podcasting, I'm, doing TV consulting. I'm looking at some other really cool, TV industry related projects, and still trying to write books and, get the podcast out every day. So
Yeah.
I gotta find some time. I gotta find some time.
Definitely. I've been approached probably about 3 or 4 times already to write a book.
Oh, you should.
You should do it, this and that, not even like, forget about investigative, like you should do an entrepreneurial book, like talk about, how you did this and all that. I'm like, yeah, that's great. I just don't see when I'll have the time to do it. And then, I realized that with all the other writing I do, because I write for PI Magazine, I'm pretty much 3 years in every issue. I've got something in there. I can pretty much have a book already in there. If I wanted to take all that stuff and just kind of organize it, I could do it. And who knows, maybe one day I'll do that.
I'm always, Matter of fact, that was what my keynote speech was about at the FBI Agents Association's G-Man Honors. It was all about sharing your stories and why you should share your stories. And let me just tell you the points that I said. The one point was just to record your own personal legacy. I mean, that you really need. There are people who are listening to this who've been in law enforcement, in the military, etc., whose own families have no idea what they did during their career.
Yeah.
And they want to know. They may not want to know right now, but at some point they're gonna want to know.
Yep.
So that's one reason. Another reason that you should share your story is that it preserves institutional knowledge. I mean, we talked about Charlie Price's interview. Many people doing investigations would have never heard about that. His wealth of knowledge, his interviewing skills would have been lost forever. But I have it now. It's recorded. And then the third reason for me is just to help shape the FBI's perception out there in the public. There's so much stuff going on, and I make sure I stay clear of politics on my podcast, and I just let the stories, the FBI's true crime case reviews, speak for the FBI.
Yeah, that's great. That legacy thing, I think you're underselling it, because it is so important. Like for me, I think about that all the time. My children have this whole thing with me, like laid out of who I am and what I'm about. Like I interview people, but I talk about my life as well as I'm interviewing people, right? And that's something that's memorialized forever. Same thing with the music, right? The songs that we write, like that stuff is around for forever. Like my great grandkids are going to be able to be like, oh, who is this nutty guy, with the microphone in front of him.
That really means a lot. I tell a story about, interviewing my father, who's 86 now, and I learned things that, I thought I knew. I thought I knew everything. And he told me things during the interview that, I didn't know, and no one would know about, that he did and accomplished in his life if I hadn't have sat down and done, conducted that interview. And so I think it's really important. So you don't have to write a book. You don't even have to come on a podcast and do an episode, but a purposeful conversation with your loved ones is absolutely needed, and you need to record it, and it just needs to be there, so that years from now, when people say, grandpa or, great uncle so-and-so, I heard that, they were a police officer or in the military or an FBI agent, you can say, yeah, and here's the story behind that. Here in his own words is him or her. I keep I gotta want to make sure I say that.
Yeah.
Telling their story, and it's important. It's important.
Legacy is so important. It really is, and it's so cool to be able to do that. And that's one of the things I also really appreciate about your show. It's just, these moments in time, and even like for me with McMillions, like I remember all that, and I was a kid. Like I remember the whole bust and the whole like crazy thing going on, and well, I wasn't a kid. I was in my 20s, but it was like, wow, I never knew all this behind the scenes stuff.
It's really fun.
Or even the So You Paint Houses guys, that episode, right? That was so cool to be able to watch. I watched the De Niro movie, and it's like, okay, now I get the real story here.
Yeah, John Tam, he was right there. He was investigating, all of those guys, and it was really cool. The thing about my podcast, and I guess this is like the most self-serving thing I can say, but I love it. Yeah. I actually enjoy interviewing, the agents and learning the stories, and I hope that comes across, during the interviews, the episodes, is that I'm enjoying it. I'm learning things, and I'm just really happy and pleased that I'm doing the show, and that it's being well received both by other agents, which was never one of my goals. I was just trying to find people that might be interested in buying books from me.
Exactly. Your whole angle was, let me think of another way for people to know that I'm a writer.
Yes, and now it's gotten, it's off on its own as as its own thing, and I'm just trying to carve out some time to finish this third novel.
I absolutely love when I go to conferences, and I got out a little bit this year and got around the country, and to have people come up and just say, hey, I listened to your show, like, thank you, I love it, it's great, like, thank you for the consistency, and just being able to learn, it's like, and I knew that was always going to be my angle, right? I'm like, I've got my stories, but nobody knows about my stories, the cases I've worked on, and they're okay, but they're not super interesting. But if I could interview other people, that would be the way to do it. And that was really my whole idea. And I'm the same way too, right? So I started doing this podcasting to bring light to Investigator's Toolbox, which is my other side project. I wanted people to know who I am and understand that this stuff is out there, right? So that was the real, this is why I'm doing this stuff. But then
content marketing, they call it.
I'm like, but I actually like doing this, so I'm going to continue to do it. And if you're an investigator, like, you interview people, this is just your nature, who you are. You like to talk to people. And my story of getting into this business is different because I was never law enforcement. I just happened to graduate from school during a hiring freeze, and I ended up staying on the private sector my whole career. And I was supposed to go work for the Department of Investigation in New York City, which is like the internal affairs for everything but NYPD. I had a job lined up, a job offer, and all that, and they had to rescind it because the city went on a hiring freeze. And the 90s were tough for work, but I found my way.
Well, that's an inspirational story for people who are, graduating now, because it's hard. Those jobs that we used to get that were out there are not necessarily out there anymore, or they've changed in a different way. And so I think your story is very inspirational to let people know that you might be able to just do what you plan to do, but do it on your own. Do it as an entrepreneur.
I got through it in a different way. And the thing is like I being a business owner now too, 16 years, I control my own destiny. But I started in the industry $6 an hour as a reference checker. That was my first job. And in fact, I had dinner this past weekend with my old boss there, and we were talking about all that stuff. It's like I got promoted within 2 hours because the person that I replaced as a field investigator, it was a mystery shopping company, was stealing from the business. I didn't know that. They caught him stealing. They threw him out, and they're like, "Hey, this new guy we hired seems pretty good. Let's let him run."
Let's bump him up.
So, yeah, if that guy hadn't been a creep, I probably wouldn't have gotten the job. I probably would have went somewhere else. So, you never know. It's all good stuff. So, tell me, who over the years has been your favorite interview? I'll put you on the spot.
Yeah, that is. Well, you know what? I have an answer ready.
Okay.
And it's not because it's necessarily my favorite, but it was the one that I realized this was more than just a true crime show. And it was with Eddie Fryer. And don't ask me what the episode number was. I think it was in the 40s or 60s. But it was Eddie Fryer, and it was a 2-part episode. I talked to him for over 4 hours and, edited it down to 2 hour-and-a-half episodes. And he talked about the Polly Klaas case. And Polly Klaas, for those who don't recall, was a 12-year-old in California who was abducted out of her bedroom.
Yeah,
I mean, the most scariest thing that
I
you
remember
could
her
think of for
picture
a parent.
all over the place. Always, have you seen her? You couldn't go anywhere during that time and not see a picture of her. Yeah.
And so Eddie Fryer was telling, the story, talking about the case review, taking us from the very beginning to the very end. And at some point, he started crying, and I started crying. And he was saying how he was so deep into the investigation that he had like a panic attack, and he walked into a conference room, but he hadn't had any sleep for days, and all he thought about was trying to get to this little girl before something happened, before she was killed, basically.
Right.
And that it became and he had kids at home around the same age, and he went to this conference room, and he got cold, and and started shaking, and had to people came in to help revive him. And as he started getting emotional, I started getting emotional, and I thought to myself, this man has just shared some of the most intimate parts of his life with me, his investigation. This is not just a true crime show. And I've had people come on to talk about how, they spent so much time with the case that they ignored their kids and their wife, and they ended up getting a divorce, and just telling those stories. And I realized, wow, this is so much more. So the Eddie Fryer investigation of the abduction of Polly Klaas is the one where I knew, okay, got to take this seriously,
absolutely,
and really commit to sharing these FBI true crime case reviews. So.
Yeah, I recall it was probably last year about this time you had a guy on too that did sex crimes. I forget if it was child pornography or whatever, and he was relaying his experience of his brother actually doing, I think it was child pornography. That's actually
yes.
And I was just like, I couldn't turn the episode off. I was just like, oh my God, this is so crazy.
Jim, oh God, what's Jim's last name? And he was actually out of the Philadelphia office. I can't think of his last name, but it was another episode about interviewing skills, but it was a conversation with purpose with a pedophile.
Yes. Yep.
Yes. And, that was one of those ones where I saw the article. I didn't know about the fact that his brother had been arrested and convicted and jailed for being a pedophile, for child pornography, or child, sexual images. And, but I found the article as I was researching. And so I said to him, I'd like to bring this up because, if people research, they're going to find it. And he said, yeah, let's talk about it. So
it was
can you imagine? Yeah. Can you imagine? That's what you do as a living, is to catch, these, child pedophiles, and you find out your brother's doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. It was,
yeah,
that was a really good episode. I remember it was just like, I couldn't turn it off. And the funny
Jim Kyle.
Okay, there you go. So I was listening to that while I was standing online waiting to vote. And it was a long line. I was there for a while. So it was I'll never forget. It was freezing cold outside too. So it was this long line that went a good distance. And I'm all bundled up, and I got my ears on, and I'm listening to this thing, and I'm like, I can't shut this off. This is so crazy. So yeah, that was a great episode. Well, I think we're going to wind down here, Jerri. This was really, really cool. I enjoyed it a lot.
I had a nice time. Thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah.
You know, I really want to get the message out. I really want to tell people about the show. I mean, the show's doing very well, but you know, it could do better. And it's not for, again, a financial or monetizing reason, even though there's nothing wrong with that. But I really want my mission. Yeah, my mission is to show the public who the FBI is and what the FBI does. And so if I can get as many people listening to these case reviews as possible, then my mission is a success. So thank you for supporting my mission.
Yeah, definitely. We're going to have links in the show notes on how to find Jerri's show and her website with all her books and all that good stuff. And yeah, just keep putting the content out. Thank you for doing what you do. It's amazing. And you can also find Jerri on Investigator's Toolbox. We have her podcast listed on there, and her books are listed on there as well. If you wanted to go with your
thanks for doing that, Matt.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you everyone for tuning in. This has been a great show this week, and we'll be back next week with another show for you guys. So take care, everybody. Have a good week, and we'll catch you next time.
Bye-bye.
Well, we told you that would be interesting, and Jerri has an amazing show and has interviewed some real interesting people, so check it out. Thanks to Jerri, and we also like to thank Crosstrack, Scope Now, PI Institute of Education for sponsoring the show. Please support our great supporters. Investigator's Toolbox has an app for Apple and Google, so take a few minutes and check out the website to really help boost your business and your research capabilities. Use code PIP201836 to save $20 when you join. If you have a question or a comment about the show, email Matt at matthews@satellitepi.com. And you can also find him on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook. We'll be back next Monday with a new show, so make sure you tune in and stay safe out there.